Hello everyone, it's Dr. Green here. It is Wednesday, 10:28, and I wanted to touch base with you. I wanted to create this short video to kind of go over writing and writing with evidence, because writing is really where you separate yourself from the pack in this EdTPA exercise, in the commentaries, and that's where you're going to excel. And I know I've worked with all of you guys before. I know I have confidence in your ability to write, but I wanted to give you an example of what writing with evidence means. And I just picked writing about the focus child as our as what this paragraph's about, but this applies to everything that you write about um, from here on out in the EdTPA. And if you go on with your education, you want to write academically, this is how you do it. Okay, so I suggest starting out with pre-writing. And I know honestly, it's kind of a pain. I get it. It's like, all right, I'm just going to start writing, but you'll do yourself a favor if you do it. And let me give you an idea of what I mean. If you commit yourself to pre-write, and it could be something this simple. If you take a look at the screen here, um, this wouldn't mean anything to anybody else, right? I mean, you would have no idea. But this took me a few minutes. I mean, even though it looks very short and kind of just fragments, it gives me an idea of what I'm going to write about, my main points, and the NAEYC. We'll get to that on DAP. Considerations for teachers, a particular part of that article that I'm going to focus on. And what I've done in my class is going to be a paragraph, and suggestions for short and long term. And then I'm going to try and tie it together with an NAEYC statement. So that those little kind of bullet points or fragments give me an idea of what I'm going to write about for my entire paper. And I'm going to share that with you in a second. So we're going to go back. It doesn't matter what you do. You can use a web, whatever. Whatever works for you. You can use an outline. It's up to you, but it will help. Okay, and then sources. Remember I asked you guys to kind of gather your books and look for things, kind of try and categorize them by different subject areas and all that, or topics and that sort of thing. Well, that is where this will come in handy. So I hope you did that. So you're going to have to cite your sources, and what that means is you want somebody who is an expert. In this case, it's the NAEYC, or the National Association for Education of Young Children, is the expert on developmentally appropriate practice, or DAP. And I'm going to cite them because that lends credibility to my writing. And one thing I noticed that I really want you guys to work on is being specific, and then also being thorough. So assume when you're writing this that your reader knows little to nothing about what your topic is. And the more you kind of break it down to that level, the better you're going to do on this whole assessment. And actually, your writing is going to be better over time. Okay, so and then here's one resource, and I'm not sure if I had already introduced this to you, but it's the citation machine, and this will help you with APA formatting. And again, scores are not really looking for perfect APA, but this will help you this will take that APA burden off your plate where you're trying to figure out how to cite certain things. It may not be absolutely perfect every time, but I'm going to show you a resource that I use every once in a while, and it's right here. It's called the citation machine. All right, and here is what came up. Obviously, it's free. Uh-oh, something happened. There we go. I didn't mean to click the recipes there. But so I just, you can look and see, is it a book, magazine, newspaper, website, journal, film, or other? And sometimes they don't fit in completely perfect. Whoa, with everything. And now we're at Carmen. Sometimes they don't fit in perfect as like with authors and things, but if you take a look at this right here, that is the citation I came up for this article, and it's by a position statement by the National Association for the Education of Young Children about developmentally appropriate practice for children ages birth through age 8. And this is an expert opinion. This is what I'm talking about, the sources, and something you can count on. Okay, so I'm looking through the article, and quite frankly, I just glanced over it, and I picked DAP. I wrote this article that I'm going to share with you in one sitting, which is never a good thing, but I wanted to get the point across that now that I've done what I created and I'll share with you, I can build on that. I can polish it, make it better. But the core to what the message I'm trying to convey to my reader is there. Okay, so I go down, and one thing that caught my attention was core considerations in developmentally appropriate practice. And I noticed there were one, two, three of them, I believe, three core considerations that teachers need to think about whenever they're making decisions about developmentally appropriate practice. Then I read this narrative to find some things that I thought were interesting and added that to my paper. So basically, this is my source, and that I use. I only used one, but it's always good to use more than one. But for this purpose, for the purpose of this activity, I just used one, and I wrote about a fictional student A. So let's go and see what I came up with here. All right. Um, okay. So here's what I came up with, and I'm just going to read it to you. And remember, this is kind of pretending that I'm writing about my focus children and focus children A in particular. But take a look at how I want you to pay attention to how I weave evidence into this and kind of how the writing sort of flows together. Okay, here we go. The influential education organization, the National Association for the Education of Young Children, and then NAEYC. That's how you want to write out any acronyms in full like that, and then you put the acronym in parentheses, and then from there on out you can just write NAEYC like that without parentheses. That's an APA thing. Okay, but anyway, they published a position statement in 2009 on developmentally appropriate practice for children ages birth through 8 years old. And then I used that citation from the citation generator. I've never really seen one like this, but again, it's, as long as I show that I'm using my sources and kind of can give them guidance on where to find it, that's good enough. They're not going to ding you for that. All right, the objective of the statement was, and then I inserted a quote, to promote excellence in early childhood education by providing a framework for best practices, page 1. Excuse me. One section of the NAEYC statement provided information about 3 considerations for teachers when making decisions about DAP in the classroom. And if you remember, here are those considerations, core considerations in developmentally appropriate practice. And I focused on this one. What is known about each child as an individual, referring to what practitioners learn about each child that has implications for how best to adapt and be responsive to that individual variation. Okay, well, let's see what that means. And that becomes clearer as you read, obviously, as you read down here. And I'll just share a few quotes from that I inserted. Okay, here we go. Second paragraph. Core consideration number 2 by the NAEYC highlighted the importance of getting to know each child individually. Strategies such as observation, clinical interview, and extended dialogue in which adult seeks to discern the child's concepts or strategies, what they're doing in class, examination of the children's work, and individual child assessments, and talking with the families are research-based best practices for teachers to follow. Okay, all of this came straight from, and that's why the quotes are there, came straight from that article that I just showed you right there. Okay, and I set myself up. What I did was I set myself up and put that in there purposely because now I'm going to write about how I did all of these things. I observed them. I conducted an interview. I talked with the parents. I examined their work and their individual assessments. All of those came into this finding of what I kind of discovered with student A. Okay, now I've set it up where I have some evidence to back me up and I can make some comments. Okay, after observing focus child A and discussions with his classroom teacher, the consensus is made, and that's not necessarily the best, but again, this was the first draft, that he struggles with written directions. In order to corroborate our assumption with student A's difficulty following written directions, a clinical interview was conducted. Student A was able to articulate how often he gives up on classroom work because he does not understand what is expected of him. So that shows evidence that he's frustrated and just kind of shuts down. All right. Now, closer analysis of student A's work shows when directions are delivered orally to him, he performs at a high level on classroom assignments. Now, this would be a great place to put in something like, for example, he scores 90% on. He gets 90% of the answers correct on the classroom assignments or whatever you can find there. Okay, but I didn't put that in there because obviously this is a made-up student and I don't have that information. On the other hand, when student A is provided a task with written directions void of oral follow-up from the teacher, his performance decreases dramatically. Okay, so if you can see where I'm hinting to, he needs directions verbally to him, verbally spoken to him in order to perform well. He has trouble sequencing and following written directions. So I'm setting this up with the suggestion that he needs oral directions. I wouldn't refer this kid to special ed or anything like that. I think this is something that can be handled directly in the classroom, and it's just a good decision for developmentally appropriate practice that meets the needs of student A. All right, now I didn't write it, but I would add. You guys have been really good about adding paragraphs about the assessments used in the class. The one thing you're missing is describing the assessment. Like, for instance, if one assessment discussed was the NWEA, you have to tell me you need to add what that is. First of all, write out what the assessment name is, and then put NWEA in parentheses. But the important thing is describe what that means. Like, why should I care? What is this going to tell me as a teacher about this student's performance? Why is it important if they score 200 instead of a 190? And what does that mean as far as, does that mean they're on grade level, etc.? Okay. All right. So you guys can run with that as it is appropriate for the assessments used in your school or where you're conducting your student teaching. Okay. Now, student A lives with his mom, a single parent, and is part of the free and reduced lunch program. Based on classroom behavior and reports from past teacher, he has been identified as at risk. A conversation with his mom supports the theory that oral directions greatly benefit the student. See how now, if you go back, this is showing that I did my due diligence. I did all of those things that teachers need to do when making a developmentally appropriate practice decision for a student. And speaking with the parents was one of them. A conversation. Okay, what's the name? She discussed how he's unable to follow simple tasks, complete chores at home unless she reviews the schedule with him on a daily basis. Additionally, she shared her work schedule and hinted to the notion that the demands put on her to work 3 jobs does not allow time for her to tutor student A at home. Okay, now, so what I'm getting to here is, if you go back to the article, they discuss poverty, they discuss different situations for the children, such as like cultural, and let me see if I can find it here. Like living in poverty is one thing to consider whenever you're making decisions that are developmental about children. So, okay. All right, and then I'm hinting to how her, and how the mom's and student A's living situation isn't the easiest, and how there isn't necessarily much time at home to do certain things. So that from that you could even go into your suggestions later and build on something that you could do for that parent to help them out, to help her out. Okay. The NAEYC suggests that teachers need to recognize and consider factors such as poverty, family, community, and culture when making decisions that are developmentally appropriate for his or her students. And again, this was just pulled from the article. And again, I'm not even sure if this is correct, but I put the ellipsis or the 3 periods in between because this was not the exact order that these words were in, but these are the words I wanted to focus on for this particular sentence, so I just put it that way. But again, it's you're not expected to be perfect APA, and I should have put the page number, so whatever. Let's just pretend it's page 10. All right, page 10. That's always a good thing. And then period. All right, now. Finally, based on the preponderance of evidence that student A thrives when given oral directions, each classroom assignment will be accompanied by a one-on-one conversation to discuss expectations. Other students in the class will benefit as well, and I didn't explain that clearly, benefit from oral or verbal directions as well, and will intermittently be invited to join the explanation of the assignment. So what I'm saying there is it's a one-on-one to start, and there are some other students who would probably benefit from that as well. The focus is on student A, but it's also on the rest of the class.